The two-day Iran nuclear talks in Geneva have ended, and another round is scheduled for early next month. And all sides are saying that these were the most detailed they've been in a long, long time. Signs of promise in the air included the Iranian and U.S. teams meeting separately on the sidelines. Iran and the P5+1, or the E3+3 as it's known in Europe, releasing its first ever joint press release, and the Iranian foreign minister saying that he hopes these talks, the first under the country's new moderate president Hassan Rouhani, are a sign of a start of a new phase in relations with the West.
We had 2 days of extensive and fruitful consultations with the E3+3, which will hopefully be the beginning of a new phase in our relations.
So what about the substance? What actual headway has been made in the West's non-negotiable demand that Iran prove beyond doubt that they're not making a nuclear bomb, and Iran's demand to have sanctions removed? Tonight, the inside story from one of the major players, America's chief negotiator, Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman. She joined me from Geneva just as the talks wrapped up. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman, thanks so much for joining me from Geneva.
Glad to be with you tonight, Christiane.
So you've just had 2 days of what everybody's describing as fruitful new nuclear talks. What to you was different this time than all the previous times?
What I think was different this time is that this Iranian government was elected by the people with a mandate for moderation, a mandate for economic change, sanctions relief, and to address the concerns of the international community to ensure a better economic future for the Iranian people. And so the Foreign Minister Zarif and his delegation came prepared for detailed, substantive discussion with a candor that I certainly have not heard in the 2 years I've been meeting with Iranians, and my P5+1 colleagues, some of whom have been doing this for quite some time, found quite new and different. All of that said, we are at the very beginning of a process. President Obama said that there are many years of mistrust, but there is also a very important objective, and that is to make sure that Iran does not acquire a nuclear weapon, and that the rights of the Iranian people to access peaceful nuclear energy are recognized if all of the concerns of the international community are addressed. So we are testing that proposition. It will take some time, but this was a useful beginning.
Did the Iranians bring concrete proposals? For instance, some have suggested that there might be the outcome of this meeting, a sort of an interim, maybe 6-month confidence-building agreement between you all, while the final details are hammered out. Is that correct?
What is correct is that we've always had a framework, and one which Iran has adopted as well, and that is we will have discussions about what our objective is, what the final steps should look like, and what an initial confidence-building measure might look like to put some time on the clock to negotiate that comprehensive agreement. What we did over these 2 days, we knew coming in that we would not, in all likelihood, reach an agreement. This is highly technical work when you're talking about a nuclear program and all the dimensions of it. That takes some time just to understand each other. These negotiations over these 2 days were conducted in English for the first time, which of course increased the pace and the ability to have direct and candid discussions. We did so, but we have a great deal more work to do. That's why an experts-level discussion with Iran is being scheduled, heading towards another P5+1 round, November 7th and 8th. So we're trying to pick up the pace of this to move quickly because we don't want Iran's nuclear program to keep moving forward. At the same time, we are cautious as we test this new government.
You also brought with you a sanctions expert. Why was that? Obviously, you've just outlined your demands. Iran wants to have sanctions relief, as you mentioned earlier. What was the purpose, and what did the sanctions expert in the room say?
The purpose of having our sanctions team here with us is because, as you state, Iran wants to get sanctions relief. But they also have to understand what the range of our sanctions are, what they require, how they work, what it takes to implement sanctions relief, what sanctions we believe need to stay in place, and we believe our core sanctions must. The international community has created one of the most, if not the most effective sanctions regime ever. The United States Congress, along with President Obama through executive orders, have put a tremendous effort in place. We want to be very careful to keep the international community united as we proceed forward here, and we want Iran to understand what is required. They have given us their thoughts, their ideas. We've given them our thoughts, our ideas. I'm not going to go into the details of the negotiation because one of the other things is that one knows the seriousness of a negotiation by, quite frankly, making sure that all the details of that discussion do not leak out. And as much as I love the press, we're being very careful to note the seriousness of these discussions.
You also had a bilateral meeting with the Iranian foreign minister and their team. They say that you wanted to have that. Why is that? What was the usefulness of that?
We have not only looked for bilateral discussions ourselves, but every member of the P5+1 has had bilateral discussions because we think it's very valuable to bring that information back into the P5+1 process. Quite frankly, after President Obama had his phone conversation with President Rouhani and Secretary Kerry had his bilateral with Foreign Minister Zarif, we had passed the bilateral Rubicon. So although this is the first time at my level we have had such an extensive bilateral since 2009 when my predecessor, now Deputy Secretary Bill Burns, met with Saeed Jalili, this was really in a different tone and manner because of what has preceded it. It was useful to the process, and we hope and look forward to continued bilateral discussions as well.
You started by talking to me about the new, more moderate president of Iran and the wishes of the Iranian people. So are you, as you go through these discussions, sort of aware that this Iranian team had to take something back to Tehran to show that their approach was working? And were they able to take something back to Tehran?
Well, they'll have to describe for themselves what they believe they got out of this negotiation, though my understanding, I didn't attend the press conference, but Foreign Minister Zarif thought this was off to a good start, that the process was going to move forward, that it was detailed, that we weren't going to be discussing the details in the public because it was a serious discussion and the beginning of a potential real negotiation. And noted that we were going to meet again on November 7th and 8th, have an experts meeting with nuclear, scientific, and sanctions experts at that expert meeting to try to really dig in and do the very difficult but critical work necessary to reach the kind of agreement that we are looking for to address all of the international community's concerns about Iran's nuclear program.
You know, the Iranians have said their red line is to have their right to enrichment recognized. Is that something the U.S., the West, is going to give?
Well, we have been very clear. President Obama said in his UN General Assembly address that we respect the rights of the Iranian people to access peaceful nuclear energy when they meet all of their obligations and responsibilities under the NPT and UN Security Council resolutions. So that is our position in these negotiations, that in fact not only the United States but the entire world gains confidence in a verifiable and meaningful way that Iran's program is entirely peaceful. We have a long way to go to address that concern. As I said today, and yesterday were useful beginnings. Now we will have to continue to see if we can make progress.
And just one last question. Did they indicate the restrictions that they would be willing to put on their enrichment as a confidence-building measure?
I'm not going to talk about details of what might have been discussed. What I can say is that we discussed everything from the objective we each seek to the final step that would be necessary to the first step that would build confidence. And those discussions were direct, specific, though there are many more details we still need to get. There are areas of great difference that still remain. Nothing has yet been agreed. No steps have been taken to relieve sanctions in any way, shape, or form because we have a lot of work left to do to begin to take those steps. But these 2 days were an important predicate to that kind of agreement, both in a confidence-building phase and in a final agreement. And, you know, Christiane, at the end of the day, the stakes here are very high. There is no way any of us after these 2 days can guarantee an outcome. But I think everyone at our round table understood that the stakes are high, and we have to do everything we can to reach a diplomatic solution. There are other options, but a diplomatic solution is the best option, and we all have to do everything we can as quickly as we can to see if, in fact, we can achieve just that.
Wendy Sherman.